Hello. This video will talk about a very important dosha or a defect, in other words, related to the seventh house of marriage or marital happiness. And this dosha is called Manglik Dosha or a defect related to Mars. Now, for people who are new to Vedic astrology, this is a very feared dosha which is described in the ancient scriptures, and the reason being is that Mars is a very hot, fiery, and a cruel planet as per Vedic astrology, and it has the capability to destroy the marital happiness of a person. And Mars can play a really devastating role in ruining the marital life of a person. So how does a marital or a Mars yoga create marital unhappiness or disharmony or destruction? Pretty much, because Mars can destroy. It is fiery, hot, and it's very destructive. So it is mentioned in the scriptures that in case Mars occupies the first, the fourth, the seventh, the eighth, and the 12th house in a person's chart, then a person becomes Manglik, meaning which Mars in his chart has the capability of destroying his marital happiness. So I'll repeat the houses in which, if Mars is placed, can destroy a person's marriage or his marital happiness. It is the first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, the eighth house, and the 12th house. So in any of these houses, if Mars is placed, a person is called Manglik, or he's called as having Manglik Dosha, which means nothing but a defect related to Mars, and it can destroy a person's marriage. It can destroy a person's marriage by either having an unhappy marriage, or also it can destroy the person's spouse, because if the spouse is not there, then there's no marriage. And this is extremely feared. And before matching horoscopes, the people, or rather before having marriages in India, people go to various scholars and get the charts, the horoscopes of the boy and girl matched. And one of the most important things which they have to find out is whether Mars is sitting either in the first, fourth, seventh, eighth, or 12th house. And if it is sitting in the individual's chart, either the boy or the girl's, then there is a problem, there is a red flag. And then they try to find out, well, does it matches between the two of them or not? Now, one of the things which they see after knowing that if a person's chart has Mars sitting in these houses is whether the other person whom he is getting married to, or his would-be spouse, also has Manglik Dosha. And in case the other person, if the boy has Manglik Dosha and the girl has Manglik Dosha, then this dosha or defect gets cancelled, and then they can go ahead, and it is believed that they can have a happy and peaceful marriage, because both negatives can block each other and it kind of becomes a positive. So this is one of the determining factors, that if a boy has Manglik Dosha, meaning that if the boy has Mars sitting on 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12 houses, the girl also is Manglik Dosha, which is in her chart also Mars is sitting in either first, fourth, seventh, eighth, or 12th houses, then the Manglik Dosha gets finished between the two would-be partners, and they can go ahead and get married. There is no problem. Now let us see why Mars placed in these houses can create a problem. When we talk about the first house, when Mars is sitting in the first house, it directly aspects the seventh house. And as we know, Mars is a very fiery planet. When it aspects the seventh house of marriage, it can destroy it completely. Another house, the fourth house, if Mars is sitting in the fourth house, it also aspects the seventh house of marriage through its fourth house aspect. And we are going to get into detailed analysis of what the aspects are of planets in another video, but we know that Mars aspects the fourth, the seventh, and the eighth house from where it is sitting. So as we discussed, if Mars is sitting in the ascendant or the first house, it aspects the seventh house of marriage, and it has the capability of destroying it, being such a cruel, such a fiery, and such a hot planet. Similarly, if Mars is sitting in the fourth house, it has the capability of destroying the seventh house because it is looking at the seventh house with its fourth house aspect. The third placement of Mars, if it's considered Manglik Dosha, is when it's sitting in the seventh house. When it's sitting in the seventh house, obviously it is sitting right there in the house of marriage, and it has the capability of destroying it. Now we go to the eighth house. If Mars is sitting in the eighth house, it has the capability of destroying a person's marriage or marital happiness, because the eighth house represents happiness gained out of marriage. So as per Vedic scriptures, the eighth house is representative of happiness gained out of one's marriage. And if Mars, which is such a malefic, hot, fiery planet, sits right there, obviously the marriage has a possibility of getting destroyed. Now we go to the 12th house, and the 12th house, Mars aspects the seventh house of marriage through its eighth house aspect. So a Mars sitting in 12th house will look directly at the seventh house of marriage, and it has the capability of destroying it completely. So that is the reason why Mars placement in 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12 is considered to be extremely inauspicious related to marriage. And a person is called to have Manglik Dosha or Mars defect, which can be balanced, of course, if the other person, meaning the spouse, also has a Mars defect, meaning in his or her chart, if she or he also has Mars sitting in 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, then the negative thing related to both the charts get blocked, and they can go ahead and get married and have a happy and prosperous life. So this explains a little about Manglik or Mars Dosha. However, let me tell you that in certain parts of India, people consider Mars sitting in the second house also as having Manglik Dosha. And it's very simple, because the second house represents family, and Mars has the capability of destroying the family life if it is sitting in the second house. However, some astrologers do not give a lot of importance to Mars sitting in the second house, just because Mars will not look sitting in the seventh house, sitting in the second house, it will not look at the seventh house. So they do not consider Mars sitting in the second house as being Manglik Dosha. However, some astrologers, like I said, believe that Mars sitting in the second house also would be considered Manglik Dosha. Now, there are certain exceptions to the Manglik Dosha, I mean, obviously, we know that Mars, if sitting within 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, is a Manglik Dosha, but not in all the cases. It is considered to have certain exceptions to the rule, and let's discuss what those exceptions are. Now, one of the major exceptions are that if Mars is combust, meaning which, if Mars is sitting with Sun. So what happens then? If Mars and Sun are sitting in the same house, obviously Mars will get combustion. It is going to lose its power of destruction because it won't be as powerful as though it was sitting all by itself. So this is one exception to the rule, that even though Mars, if sitting in 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12 houses, if it is sitting with Sun and gets combust, the Mars dosha or the defect caused by dosha of Mars gets cancelled just because it loses its power to destroy. Also, another exception to the rule is that in case Mars is weak in degrees, say for example Mars is at 0 or a 1 degree inside that particular zodiac sign or house, obviously it will be weak, so its destructive capabilities gets reduced to a great extent. Another exception is if Mars is at a very advanced degree, say for example out of the 30 degrees in a zodiac sign, if Mars is sitting at the 29th degree, just as an example, then obviously also it's considered to be in its old age, meaning which it's extremely weak and its destructive capabilities gets reduced considerably. So another two conditions. The first we discussed was Mars, if it's combust with Sun, obviously it loses its power. The second condition, if it's weak in degrees, either having a 0 to a very small degree, or the third condition is if it's at a very advanced degree, meaning which it's considered to be weak because of its old age into that particular zodiac sign, then also it loses its power to destroy, and a person is not considered Manglik or having Mars defect. However, there's another condition to this, that we have to look at the Shadbal chart as well. Now Shadbal is a chart which tells us, as per Vedic astrology, how strong that particular planet is. It's called Shadbal. Shad means 6, Bal means strength. So there are 6 ways of looking at the strength of that planet in Vedic astrology, and we can have a video on that in detail as well. But in a nutshell here, we have to see, although he may be weak in degrees, if it's strong in Shadbal or its 6 divisional strength, then also it has the capability to destroy. So the condition has to be that it should be weak in Shadbal as well. So we have to keep that in mind while taking into consideration this exception to the rule of weak in degrees. Another exception to having a Mars defect in somebody's chart, even though Mars is sitting in 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, is that if there is an aspect of the planet Jupiter on Mars, and we know that Mars aspects through its 5th house aspect, 7th house aspect, and 9th house aspect. So in case Jupiter is aspecting the Mars, which is sitting in these houses of 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, if Jupiter is aspecting Mars, then also the Mars defect or the Manglik Dosha gets cancelled. Another condition is in case Jupiter is sitting in these houses 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12 along with Mars, then also the Mars defect or Manglik Dosha gets cancelled. Of course, the condition here is that we have to see how strong Jupiter is and whether it has the capability of providing its benefic effect or not. Say, for example, if Jupiter is sitting with Mars in its debilitated Rashi, which is Capricorn. So I'll give you an example. So in case Jupiter and Mars are sitting in one sign of Capricorn where Mars gets exalted and Jupiter gets debilitated, obviously in that case the Mars dosha or Mars debilitation will not be cancelled, just because we know that Mars is extremely powerful in that sign, so it will not be able to control it, especially with the Jupiter which is debilitated in the same sign. So we have to be careful in determining how strongly Jupiter can influence Mars to cool it down, or to balance it rather. Jupiter does not cool Mars, but it balances it and makes it a little benefic so that it can lose many of its destructive capabilities. Another condition when the Mars dosha or Mars defect or Manglik dosha can be cancelled is when Mars is sitting with Moon. And again, we have to see whether Moon is strong or weak. If Moon is weak, then of course it does not have the capability to cool down Mars. But in case if Mars is sitting with a very strong Moon, then definitely it can reduce the Mars or the Manglik dosha to a very large extent, and it is considered to be cancelled. Now, another condition where some astrologers have mentioned that the Mars dosha can be cancelled is, we've already discussed that if the spouse also has Mars sitting in 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, so it gets cancelled. But some astrologers have even gone up to the extent of saying that if any malefic planet like Sun, Mars, Rahu, Ketu, and Saturn, who are malefics, are sitting in the same zodiac sign. No, I apologize, not same zodiac sign, but in the same houses as the spouse's chart, then also it gets cancelled. So for example, if Mars is sitting in the first house in a boy's chart and any malefic is sitting in the first house in the girl's chart is there, then the Mars dosha gets cancelled. Similarly, in either of these houses, if in one person's chart, which is in either of the houses of 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12, if Mars is sitting and the other persons, which is either the spouse or the would-be spouse, in the houses, the same house, a malefic is sitting, then also the dosha or Mars defect gets cancelled. And I'm going to clarify it again. The condition is that if Mars is sitting in the first house of a boy's chart, then another malefic should also be sitting in the first house of the girl's chart. If Mars is sitting in the fourth house in a boy's chart, then another malefic has to be sitting in the fourth house of a girl's chart. So it has to be the same house. It is slightly different than when both are Manglik. Then that condition does not apply, that both the Mars have to be sitting in the same houses. Both can be Manglik or having Mars dosha in either of these houses, which is 1, 4, 7, 8, and 12. But in case this negativity of Mars has to be blocked by the other through another malefic other than Mars, then that malefic has to be sitting in the same house as the spouse's chart. So this is one condition also which would cancel the Mars defect. However, the last condition of having malefics in the same house is disputed by certain astrologers, so it's a matter of discussion. But pretty much this describes about Mars and Manglik Dosha, and it is highly recommended that we consider and take these points into consideration at the time of matching of the chart and at the time of deciding whether the boy and a girl's chart are well matched and whether there is happiness in their marital life. Thank you.